Maybe let someone fluent handle this one, he said, grinning toward the glass wall, loud enough for the team to hear. Laughter bubbled across the conference table like cheap champagne. Me. I just stood there, hands tight at my sides, as if I hadn't poured my soul into this pitch for 3 sleepless nights. You ever realize you're the joke after the punchline's already landed? Hi everyone. My name is Arushi. And before you make assumptions, no, I wasn't just the assistant or the intern who overstayed her welcome. I was the architect behind this firm's biggest campaigns. But no one saw that, because I never raised my voice. I didn't speak like them. And apparently that meant I didn't belong. It started with subtle corrections. How about we say, schedule, the American way? Or, let's have someone else take over this client call. No offense, just tone. Always tone. Always some excuse. And I smiled. I swallowed it. I rewrote their messes into clean $1,000,000 copy. And when the numbers soared, the credit went to my boss, Todd. Todd with his iron teeth and cardboard charm. But that morning, that was different. I walked into the big pitch meeting holding the campaign deck I'd led, pages perfectly mapped, every strategy backed by 6 months of groundwork. He snatched it from my hands mid-walk. Didn't look me in the eye. Then, in front of the client, our team and the junior associates, barely 2 months, and he turned to me and said, "We won't need you in this one, Arushi. You're not a good fit for this project." No explanation. No room to argue. Just a smug smirk and the sound of my own heartbeat as I backed out of the glass room. The door shut behind me like a guillotine. And that client he was about to impress? He wasn't just a client. He was my mother's brother. The man who raced me on resilience and strategy. I didn't cry. I just pulled out my phone, tapped a message I'd drafted months ago, and hit send. Because what Todd didn't know. This wasn't his agency. And I wasn't just the girl with an accent. He strutted into that boardroom like a man who owned it. Sleeves rolled, gel-slicked hair, that signature half-smirk pasted across his face. Todd had no idea the floor beneath him was already giving way. As for me, I wasn't in the hallway crying. I was in the elevator, heading up to the 19th floor. Executive level. Where my name wasn't whispered. It was respected. When I stepped out, Amanda, the board's senior advisor, looked up from her laptop and said with a smile, "Finally ready?" I nodded. Then pulled the signed papers from my bag. The ones that would formally transfer controlling shares back under my full name. My name had been hidden under a trust account until the anniversary clause triggered. Today was that day. But before we could finish, Amanda glanced at her phone and raised an eyebrow. He just told the client that he led the campaign. I didn't flinch. Of course he did. Because men like Todd don't just lie. They build thrones out of other people's silence. He used my strategies, my reports, my designs, and assumed I'd stay quiet, tucked behind my accent and politeness like a curtain. But I wasn't hiding. I was waiting. I walked back down, not into the office but into the adjacent conference room behind a one-way mirror. Through the glass I watched him laugh with the client, throwing out buzzwords I'd taught him 6 months ago. And the client? Uncle Raj. He was playing along so well you'd think he didn't know me. Until he casually leaned forward and asked, "So who came up with the resonance flow strategy?" "It's genius." Todd puffed his chest. "That'd be me. All mine." Raj smiled politely. "Of course. Would you excuse me a moment?" Todd nodded smug. The second Raj left, he turned to the team and said, "Guys, this is a win. Text Arushi to fix up the back-end data. But keep her off the call tomorrow. We don't want to confuse the client." That's when the internal line rang. Amanda patched through the board Zoom. Todd was summoned right there, right then. Confused, he walked toward the screen, still straightening his shirt. One by one, the board members appeared. Then I stepped into the room. He turned. Blinked. I sat down across from him. And for the first time ever, he didn't have a single word to say. He looked at me like I was a glitch in his reality. Like the intern had wandered into the wrong meeting. No. I wasn't the intern. I was the majority shareholder. And the board was waiting on my nod. Todd opened his mouth, maybe to joke, maybe to charm. But Amanda cut in before he could fake a breath. "Todd, this is a formal review. Please sit." He sat slowly, that smirk unraveling at the corners. His eyes darted toward me, searching for familiarity, maybe pity. He found neither. Because the girl he mocked? She didn't exist anymore. The chair I sat in was warm not just from leather, but from years of fire I had walked through to get here. And I was done playing small. The board began. We've received concerns regarding unethical conduct, taking credit for subordinate work, discriminatory behavior, and violating internal protocol on campaign ownership. Todd laughed. This is ridiculous. Who's making these claims? I tilted my head. Start with me. He blinked hard. Arushi. I thought we were a team. I mentored you. You used me, I said quietly. My voice. My work. Then humiliated me when I no longer made you look good. He shifted in his seat. This is being blown out of proportion. I didn't mean anything by the accent jokes. It's just culture stuff. Amanda's lips tightened. We reviewed the recordings. Todd's face went pale. Oh yes, the recordings. The ones IT had been quietly backing up every time he slipped during meetings. It wasn't just me. He mocked another associate's stutter last week. Told an immigrant designer to Americanize her name. There was a pattern. And now it was in full view. I slid a folder across the table labeled Misappropriation Report, Internal Audit Findings. His hand shook when he opened it. In this file, I said calmly, you'll find itemized breakdowns of every campaign I led that you claimed ownership of, including voice memos, timestamps, metadata from our project management tool. He didn't flip past page 3. Instead he looked up at me, tears now visibly pooling, and whispered, "Why are you doing this?" The question didn't deserve an answer. But I gave one anyway. Because you looked me in the eyes, and told me I didn't belong. His voice broke. Please. Don't do this to me. I have a family. I stood slowly. My voice was ice. So did I. And I built mine in silence while you laughed in rooms you didn't deserve to enter. Behind me the board voted. Unanimous. The Zoom call echoed with a robotic chime. Motion passed. Termination effective immediately. Todd's lips parted like he might scream, but nothing came out. Only the quiet static of a man unraveling. Amanda closed her laptop without looking at him. The rest of the board members began logging off one by one. And Todd? He just sat there. Like a magician whose tricks had stopped working. I could see it in his eyes. The disbelief, the sting. Not because he was sorry, but because someone like me had the power to end him. You don't understand, he finally muttered. This job, this agency, it's all I have. I looked at him, really looked. Not with anger. Not with pity. But with the cold clarity of a woman who had finally stopped begging to be seen. That's the difference between us, Todd, I said, voice like still water. You had this agency. I built it. His mouth quivered. You're lying. I pulled a file from my bag. Legal, notarized, dated. Initial investment came from my family trust. The original founder was my uncle. I asked him to let me start from the bottom. No one knew who I was. Not even you. And you know what? I leaned in. You proved why I needed to stay silent. Todd's hands balled into fists. I gave you years, I continued. 16-hour days. Holidays. All while you made jokes behind my back. Do you know what it's like to hear your boss call you a diversity hire after hours? To be told to fix your voice so it's more palatable? His face crumpled. He looked around the empty room as if someone might rescue him. But there was no one. Just him, and the weight of everything he never saw coming. He reached for the phone on the table. Can I at least speak to HR? I shook my head. Already done. You'll receive your formal termination letter within the hour. Security's waiting downstairs. That's when the tears came, not dramatic but quiet, pitiful. I made mistakes, okay? He said. But don't erase me like this. Please. Not in front of everyone. I stared at him. Funny, I said, rising. That's exactly what you did to me. I turned toward the door. And behind me the man who once silenced me was now whispering my name like a prayer no one would answer. I walked out without looking back. But the silence followed me, sticky, ghost-like. That strange kind of silence that only exists when justice has finally been served. But the ache still lingers. Amanda caught up beside me in the corridor. You all right? She asked gently. I paused, hand resting on the elevator button. Then exhaled. No. But I will be. Because healing doesn't begin with revenge. It begins the moment you stop shrinking for people who dim your worth. Downstairs the office buzzed. Everyone had seen the board meeting alert. Whispers threaded the air like electricity. I passed a group of junior associates by the kitchenette. They stood straighter as I walked by, uncertain, a little stunned. One of them, a shy girl named Lena with thick glasses and a trembling smile, stopped me. "Was it true?" she asked quietly. "About everything?" I looked at her, saw myself in her eyes. The hunger. The fear. The hope of being enough. "It's all true," I said softly. "And now it's our job to build something better." Lena nodded. Her eyes brimmed with tears she didn't let fall. I kept walking, to the far-end office that had sat empty since the agency's founder moved overseas. My name was already on the frosted glass door. Arushi Mehra, Executive Director. I stepped inside. The desk was bare. The walls empty. But the view? It was breathtaking. A full panorama of the skyline I had once stared at from a tiny cubicle. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Raj. "You didn't need my help after all. Proud of you. Come for dinner." I smiled. And as I sat behind the desk, my desk, I thought of every moment I had swallowed pain to survive. Every joke I'd let pass. Every room I'd made myself smaller in. No more. I pulled out a pen, opened my notebook, and wrote 3 words across the first clean page. Rewrite the culture. Because this wasn't just about Todd. It was about every woman who's ever been told to fix her tone. Every accent mocked behind closed doors. Every brilliant mind overlooked because she didn't speak the way they expected. The storm had cleared. And in its place? A woman who no longer waited to be welcomed. She created the table. And owned every single seat. The agency didn't fall apart after Todd was gone. It flourished. Turns out when you remove rot, things bloom. That Monday I hosted my first all-hands meeting. No glass walls. No power plays. Just one long table, chairs pulled close, coffee brewing in the back. I stood at the head, but this time not to pitch someone else's vision. I was here to tell the truth. Most of you know me as Arushi, the strategist, the voice behind the curtain, I began. But starting today that curtain comes down. The room was quiet, not out of fear but attention. Real attention. The kind I'd begged for, once. "We're rebuilding," I continued. "Not just what we do but how we do it. No more silence. No more stolen credit. And if you've ever felt invisible in these halls, you're not anymore." Someone clapped. Then another. And slowly the air began to shift, like a window had been cracked open after years of being sealed shut. That afternoon I reviewed resumes, not for Ivy League polish but for grit. I hired voices that didn't sound like everyone else. Brought in names with hyphens, accents, rhythm. Because I knew what it felt like to carry brilliance in your mouth and be told your pronunciation made it invalid. On Wednesday HR pinged me. Apparently, Todd had tried to apply for roles using a different version of his resume. I stared at his name on the screen. For a moment I felt nothing. Then I forwarded it to legal. Let the silence speak louder than the rejection. Thursday came with press calls. Apparently our last campaign went viral, the one Todd claimed as his own. Reporters wanted quotes. I gave them 2 words. Team effort. That night I stayed late. Just me, the hum of the city, and a single sticky note still pressed to the inside of my drawer. A note I wrote a year ago when I almost quit. "They don't see you now. But one day they'll answer to you." I left it there. Not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that silence is not weakness. Sometimes it's just the sound of power being patient. No. That power had a voice. Clear, steady, unapologetic. Friday morning arrived with rain. Not the kind that pounds windows, but the quiet, cleansing kind, as if the sky itself was resetting. I wore my hair down that day. No blazer. Just a soft emerald blouse, loose at the wrists. I wanted to look like me. Not a version polished to fit their expectations. When I stepped into the lobby, I noticed a familiar figure standing by reception. Todd. Umbrella dripping. Eyes hollow. Holding a manila envelope like it weighed more than his career. He saw me and straightened. "Arushi. 5 minutes. Please." I could have walked past him. Security wouldn't have questioned it. But I didn't. Not because I owed him anything, but because I needed to close the door myself. We stepped into the small glass meeting room, The one where I'd once been told to speak less, so clients wouldn't get confused. The irony burned. He sat. I didn't. Say what you came to say, I told him, arms crossed. He hesitated. Then slid the envelope across the table. I wrote a letter. To the board. And to you. I didn't touch it. His voice was barely above a whisper now. I've been trying to get interviews. No one calls back. They've seen the articles. The forums. I stayed silent. I know I was cruel. I know I used you. And I can't take it back. But I see it now. The rot. In me. In the system I protected. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. My daughter asked me last night what I do for a living. I couldn't answer her. I blinked. For a moment my heart flickered, not with forgiveness, but with the ache of how many lives get poisoned by men who never stop to reflect until it's too late. I'm not here to beg, he said. Just to say I was wrong. I studied him. Not the words. Not the tears. But whether he finally understood that I wasn't just his mistake. I was his mirror. And for once he didn't look away. I gave a single nod. Not permission. Not comfort. Just finality. You'll get through it, I said. If you choose to change. But not here. He swallowed hard. I turned, walked to the door. And without looking back said, be the man your daughter can answer proudly for one day. Behind me the rain kept falling. But inside me, everything had cleared. That evening I stayed long after the lights dimmed. The office was quiet, not empty but calm. Desks where ambition once clashed with ego now held ideas blooming in every direction. I looked out across the floor. Lena was still typing, headphones in. A design intern from Ghana sketched a concept on glass with bright yellow markers. 2 junior execs, both women, both new, debated strategy with laughter, not fear. This was the culture we were told didn't exist. This was the team we were told couldn't lead. And yet here we were. Leading. My phone buzzed. An invite to speak at an upcoming Women in Tech Summit. I almost declined. But then I thought of the hundreds watching. Girls with accents like mine. Names mispronounced in every classroom. Told to polish their dreams into something more acceptable. So I hit accept. And I began to write the speech. When they say you don't belong in the room, don't just enter it, own it. Decorate the walls with your voice. Hang your heritage on every syllable. And when they try to erase you, remind them that ink doesn't come off skin. I closed the laptop, then walked to the front of the office, where a frame now hung on the wall. It wasn't my degree. Not a press feature. It was a photo. Of the first office I ever sat in, windowless, quiet, anonymous. Where I worked 16-hour days without a nameplate. Where I stayed late just to fix presentations someone else would take credit for. I hung it there as a reminder. That roots grow underground. That silence is not surrender. It's preparation. And when the day finally comes, the bloom is undeniable. As I turned off the lights, I caught my reflection in the glass. Not the girl who once stood outside that boardroom, heart pounding, words trembling, but the woman who had reclaimed her place without raising her voice. Not with fire, but with clarity. Not to destroy, but to rebuild. I locked the door behind me. One word echoed softly as I stepped into the night.